I grew up playing the basketball with the boys, so like it's always been physical and feisty, and like that's what it is, and you got to find a way to hold your own.
What happens when the most electrifying player in women's basketball decides to step away? What does it mean when someone who has redefined what's possible on the court chooses silence over spectacle? The announcement came like a thunderbolt on a clear day, unexpected yet somehow inevitable. Caitlin Clark, the phenomenon who has captivated audiences and shattered expectations, is taking an extended hiatus from competitive basketball until April. What's your reaction to Caitlin Clark stepping away? Drop your thoughts below. Does this change the future of women's basketball? This isn't just another off-season story. This is a seismic shift that exposes just how much one player can influence an entire sport. For over 200 days, arenas that once erupted with anticipation will feel different. Television broadcasts that relied on her magic will search for new storylines. The Indiana Fever, a franchise transformed by her presence, must navigate uncharted waters without their cornerstone. The decision crystallized after a season-ending moment that encapsulated everything frustrating about Clark's rookie campaign. In her final game, contact that should have resulted in free throws instead resulted in silence from the officials. The non-call wasn't an isolated incident, but rather the culmination of months of inconsistent officiating that left fans questioning whether the league's brightest star was receiving fair treatment. Ryan Ruocco's confirmation made it official. No international play, no exhibition tournaments, no training camps until spring arrives, while other players chase overseas paychecks and maintain their competitive edge through constant competition. Clark is charting a different course. She's prioritizing longevity over immediate gratification, understanding that sometimes the most powerful statement is knowing when to pause. The backlash from that final game extended beyond the court itself. Social media platforms ignited with frustrated supporters demanding explanations for what appeared to be obvious missed calls. Players throughout the league began speaking out about the toxic environment that had developed around the sport, with some expressing exhaustion over the constant scrutiny and negativity that seemed to follow wherever the spotlight shone brightest. Alyssa Thomas emerged as a particularly vocal critic of fan behavior, specifically calling out supporters for crossing lines of basic decency and respect. Her timing raised eyebrows among observers who noted that similar incidents earlier in the season had been met with relative silence. The inconsistency in when and why certain behaviors were addressed became another layer of controversy surrounding Clark's treatment throughout her debut professional season. This strategic withdrawal represents more than just physical recovery. It's a calculated move that demonstrates maturity far beyond her years. While most young athletes feel compelled to prove themselves through constant competition, Clark understands that preservation of her abilities serves both her individual interests and the broader health of women's basketball. She's thinking like a veteran while still technically being a rookie. The workload Clark absorbed during her first professional season was staggering by any measure. In just over 300 days, she logged nearly 3,000 minutes across 81 games, a pace that would challenge even the most seasoned professionals. The physical demands were matched by mental pressure that came from being the focal point of every defensive strategy and the primary source of offensive creation for her team. Her performance in that final playoff game against the Connecticut Sun exemplified both her incredible talent and the impossible burden she carried: 25 points and 9 assists, while facing a defense specifically designed to neutralize her impact. Every possession required her to solve problems that most players never encounter. The Sun, battle-tested and playoff experienced, threw everything they had at stopping her, yet she still found ways to create opportunities for teammates who couldn't convert those chances into points. The statistical excellence only tells part of Clark's story. Her court vision allowed her to see passing lanes that others missed entirely. Her shooting range forced defenses to extend further than they were comfortable with, creating driving lanes that didn't exist for other players. When teammates failed to capitalize on the open looks she created, the burden fell back on her shoulders to find alternative methods of generating offense. What made Clark's impact truly special wasn't just her individual brilliance, but her ability to elevate everyone around her. The Indiana Fever transformed from an afterthought into must-see television simply because of her presence on the roster. teammates who had struggled to find their rhythm in previous seasons suddenly found themselves with clean looks and clear roles within an offensive system built around Clark's unique skill set. Her leadership qualities emerged naturally despite her rookie status. In crucial moments when games hung in the balance, teammates looked to her for guidance and inspiration. She embraced that responsibility while simultaneously dealing with the pressure of being the league's most scrutinized player. Every mistake was magnified, every success was analyzed for deeper meaning, and every game became a referendum on her place in the sport's hierarchy. The decision to skip overseas competition demonstrates Clark's understanding of the long-term picture. International leagues offer financial opportunities and competitive experiences, but they also represent additional wear and tear on bodies that have already endured grueling schedules. Her choice to prioritize rest over revenue shows a level of strategic thinking that suggests she's planning for sustained excellence rather than short-term gains. Similarly, her absence from 3-on-3 tournaments and exhibition games sends a clear message about priorities. While these formats might seem less demanding than full-court basketball, they actually require intense bursts of energy and constant defensive attention. Clark recognized that what her body needed wasn't a lighter version of competition, but genuine recovery time that would allow her to return at full strength. The timing of this announcement couldn't be more significant for the broader landscape of women's professional basketball. The WNBA has experienced unprecedented growth in popularity and media attention, much of which can be directly attributed to Clark's magnetic presence. Her ability to fill arenas in visiting cities and generate social media engagement has translated into tangible business benefits for the entire league. Television ratings spiked whenever Clark took the court. Merchandise sales reached levels that exceeded expectations. Arena attendance in markets that had never shown significant interest in women's basketball suddenly became viable revenue streams. The economic impact of her presence extended far beyond her individual salary and endorsement deals to affect the financial health of the entire organization. Without Clark's weekly performances to drive viewership and engagement, the WNBA faces a critical test of its underlying popularity. Can the league maintain momentum built around one transcendent player when that player is temporarily absent? The answer will likely determine whether the recent surge in interest represents a sustainable trend or a phenomenon tied too closely to a single individual. The officiating controversies that plagued Clark throughout the season highlighted broader issues within the sports administration. Fans consistently pointed to what appeared to be different standards applied to different players, with superstars in other sports typically receiving favorable treatment that Clark seemed denied. The pattern became impossible to ignore and contributed to a growing sense that the league had a problem with consistency in how games were called. These officiating disparities weren't limited to minor infractions or judgment calls. Contact that would have resulted in free throws for established veterans was routinely ignored when Clark drove to the basket. Physical play that crossed the line from competitive to dangerous was allowed to continue without intervention from referees who seemed reluctant to make calls that might affect game outcomes. The psychological impact of this treatment extended beyond individual games. Clark had to adjust her playing style to account for contact that wouldn't be penalized, altering her natural aggressiveness and potentially limiting her effectiveness. The mental energy required to overcome this additional obstacle represented another layer of challenge that most players never face during their rookie seasons. Fan behavior became another storyline that overshadowed the actual basketball being played. The passion that Clark's play generated sometimes crossed into inappropriate territory, with supporters and detractors alike using her success or struggles as justification for behavior that had no place in professional sports. The toxicity reached levels that prompted league intervention and widespread discussion about acceptable boundaries for fan expression. Clark's response to these challenges demonstrated remarkable professionalism. Rather than engage in public disputes or allow external noise to affect her preparation, she maintained focus on her individual performance and team success. Her ability to compartmentalize distractions while performing at an elite level spoke to mental toughness that goes beyond physical skills. The rivalry with Angel Reese provided compelling theater throughout the season, but also illustrated how individual matchups can be amplified beyond their natural significance. Both players brought unique strengths to their teams, yet media coverage often reduced their accomplishments to direct comparisons that missed the broader context of team success and individual development within different systems. Reese's competitive fire and willingness to engage in verbal exchanges created natural drama that fans embraced. Her explanation of trash talk as part of competitive basketball while maintaining off-court friendships represented a mature perspective on professional rivalry. The dynamic between these two players became a storyline that transcended individual games and extended into broader cultural conversations about competition and respect. With Clark's temporary withdrawal from competition, the balance of power within the league shifts dramatically. Players who operated in her shadow now have opportunities to claim larger portions of the spotlight. The Indiana Fever must reimagine their identity without their primary offensive weapon. Other teams can adjust their defensive preparations without having to account for Clark's unique combination of range and playmaking ability. The economic implications extend throughout the basketball ecosystem. Sponsors who aligned their brands with Clark's rising profile must adapt their strategies to account for her absence. Television networks that built programming around her games need alternative storylines to maintain viewer interest. Merchandisers who capitalized on her popularity face months without new content to drive sales. Arena operators in cities throughout the league will likely see attendance figures return to pre-Clark levels, representing significant revenue losses for organizations that had grown accustomed to elevated ticket sales. The ripple effects touch everyone from parking attendants to concession workers who benefited from increased foot traffic generated by her presence. Yet this pause also creates opportunities for the sport to demonstrate its depth and resilience. Other players can step into featured roles and show that women's basketball offers compelling storylines beyond any single individual. Teams can develop new offensive systems and playing styles without having to account for one player's overwhelming influence on game planning and strategy. The development of younger players might actually accelerate without the pressure of being compared to Clark's immediate impact. Rookies entering the league can establish their own identities, rather than being measured against an unprecedented standard of excellence. The sport can explore different narratives and highlight various styles of play that might have been overshadowed by Clark's dominance. Aja Wilson emerges as the most obvious candidate to carry increased responsibility as the league's primary ambassador during Clark's absence. Her combination of talent, experience, and professionalism makes her an ideal representative for the sport's values and aspirations. Wilson's ability to perform in clutch moments and lead her team through playoff competition provides the kind of storyline that can sustain fan interest. The playoff race takes on different characteristics without Clark's presence. Teams that might have struggled to match the Fever's offensive firepower can now compete on more equal terms. Defensive schemes that were built specifically to contain Clark's impact can be adjusted to address different challenges. The overall competitive balance shifts in ways that might create more parity and unpredictable outcomes. International competition loses one of its most marketable American stars, potentially affecting viewership and sponsorship for events that had planned to feature Clark as a primary attraction. Her absence from these tournaments represents missed opportunities for the sport's global growth and development, as her style of play and personality had begun attracting international attention. Training camps and development programs must adjust their curricula without being able to reference Clark's techniques and approaches as current examples. Young players who had hoped to compete against or learn from her will have to wait for opportunities that might not come again for months. The development pipeline feels her absence at multiple levels. Clark's impact on women's basketball extends far beyond statistics and team success. She became a cultural phenomenon who attracted attention from people who had never previously shown interest in the sport. Her ability to make extraordinary plays look routine while maintaining an approachable personality created a perfect storm of athletic excellence and marketing appeal. The highlight reels she generated became viral content that reached audiences far beyond traditional basketball fans. Social media engagement levels around her performances set new standards for women's professional sports. Her influence on fashion, endorsement opportunities, and media coverage created templates that other players can follow even in her absence. Her approach to handling pressure and maintaining perspective offers lessons for athletes across all sports. The way she processed criticism while staying focused on improvement demonstrates maturity that typically develops over much longer careers. Her willingness to make difficult decisions about her own well-being sets an example for future generations of professional athletes. The technical aspects of her game revolutionized how coaches think about offensive strategy and player development. Her shooting range forced defenses to extend coverage in ways that created opportunities for teammates throughout the court. Her passing vision allowed for offensive concepts that hadn't been possible with previous generations of players. Her competitive drive elevated the intensity and preparation level required to compete at the highest levels. Looking ahead to her eventual return, the anticipation will build throughout the months of her absence. Fans will analyze every social media post and public appearance for hints about her preparation and mindset. Media outlets will speculate about how the time away might affect her performance and whether she can recapture the momentum that made her such a dominant force during her rookie season. The league itself will likely undergo changes during her absence that might alter the environment she returns to. New players will establish themselves, coaching strategies will evolve, and fan expectations might shift in ways that create different challenges and opportunities. Her ability to adapt to these changes will determine whether her impact can be sustained over multiple seasons. Other players will have opportunities to claim portions of the spotlight that had been focused primarily on Clark. This redistribution of attention might ultimately benefit the sport by creating multiple storylines and featured performers, rather than relying too heavily on any single individual. The depth of talent throughout the league can be showcased in ways that weren't possible when one player dominated so much coverage. The business side of women's basketball faces a crucial test during Clark's absence. Executives and marketing professionals must demonstrate that the sport's recent growth represents sustainable interest, rather than a temporary phenomenon tied to one player's emergence. Success in maintaining engagement levels will validate the investments that have been made in promoting and developing women's professional basketball. Caitlin Clark's decision to step away from competition represents a pivotal moment in the evolution of women's professional basketball. Her choice prioritizes long-term success over short-term expectations, demonstrating the kind of strategic thinking that separates truly elite athletes from those who burn out under pressure. The impact of her absence will be felt throughout every aspect of the sport, from television ratings to arena attendance to social media engagement. When she returns to competition in April, the stage will be set for one of the most anticipated comebacks in recent sports history. The time away will have allowed her body to recover and her mind to reset, potentially leading to even higher levels of performance. The league will have had months to adjust to life without its brightest star, making her return all the more impactful. The story of Caitlin Clark's first professional season and subsequent hiatus will be remembered as a defining moment in the growth of women's basketball. Her influence extended far beyond individual games or personal achievements to affect the entire trajectory of the sport. The pause she has chosen represents not an ending, but a strategic intermission before the next chapter of what promises to be an extraordinary career. The legacy she has already established in just one season demonstrates the transformative power of exceptional talent, combined with perfect timing. Her impact on attendance, viewership, and cultural relevance created a new baseline for what's possible in women's professional sports. The months ahead will test whether that foundation can support continued growth or whether the sport was too dependent on her individual brilliance. As fans count the days until her return, the basketball world continues spinning with new storylines and emerging talents. But there's no question that when Caitlin Clark steps back onto a professional court, the energy will be electric and the expectations will be enormous. The pause she has chosen may ultimately prove to be the decision that extended and amplified her career rather than interrupted it, setting the stage for sustained excellence that could define women's basketball for years to come.